Shadow Hack. Chapter 231, Enormous Harvest from the Battle. At this moment, Flowing Cloud had surpassed the power of the 5 violent blades stacked together displayed by Li Yunmu and his 4 shadows. She was capable of this because of the Dark Flux 8 spell banner's ice flag. However, it wasn't over yet. Once Flowing Cloud became more accustomed to the ice flag's controls, she launched another round of attacks. Suddenly, an array of ice arrows covered the sky. More than 100 missiles rushed toward the Devil King. Soon, it was no longer able to dodge, and out of more than 100 arrows, it was struck by nearly 90% of them. The formidable might of this attack surpassed even the ice cones falling from the sky. This time, more than half of the rainbow light was extinguished from the body of the Divine Blood Devil King. The power of each ice arrow was extraordinary, and although they couldn't be compared to the enormous ice cones, their power was concentrated and there were much more of them. Ice Dragon Attack! Flowing Cloud yelled out, and an ice dragon took form. It was half a meter wide and 10 meters long, and upon appearing, it rushed straight for the Devil King. Ice Dragon Attack! Frozen Prison! Frost Ray! Flowing Cloud seemed to have gone out of control. She commanded an incredibly large amount of deadly ice energy to attack the Devil King. Since she cultivated the ice flux energy and flux skills related to it, she had grasped 2 medium-level killing techniques, Ice Arrow and Frost Ray. However, with the assistance of Dark Flux 8 spell banner's ice flag, she could unleash skills that she hadn't yet comprehended nor had enough power for. At this moment, she didn't even have to worry about exhausting her strength. This was the deadly power of a killing spell. Apart from Li Qinghong and Lin Jian who had experienced it before, the others hadn't encountered such spells. Today, they saw for the first time how deadly were the killing spells. It was evident that this Dark Flux 8 spell banner which was operated by Flux disciples was only a small-scale deadly spell. It had the perimeter of roughly 300 meters. Yet even so, a Devil King like the one which had almost killed Li Yunmu before could only howl fiercely when faced with the attacks from the deadly spell. The creature had no power to retaliate. System: gather data on Dark Flux 8 spell banner and categorize it according to attributes and their killing power. Li Yunmu became apprehensive and asked the system to analyze the details of this deadly spell. He could already see some of the outer threads. The crucial part of this Dark Flux 8 spell banner wasn't the high-level hallucinations or illusionary sounds, but the shield that prevented monsters from sensing anything. With the terrifying movement speed of the Divine Blood Devil King, if it hadn't lost all sense of direction, then how could it have gotten hit by the rain of ice arrows? While entrapped, the Devil King simply didn't know where the attacks were coming from. Even its ability to sense danger had been blocked, leaving it unable to retaliate. Soon, the second Divine Blood Devil King, which was also entrapped within the valley, rushed toward Li Yunmu's thunder flag. Instantly, Li Yunmu became extremely excited and began to attack crazily. Once he began operating the thunder flag, he instantly understood why Flowing Cloud had become so violent. At this moment, 7 deadly thunder skills appeared within his consciousness. Heavenly Thunderbolt, Mad Thunder, Thunder Explosion, Thunder Serpent, Thunder Hell, Heavenly Thunder Earthly Flame, and Thunder Chains. Li Yunmu commanded with a thought, and instantly a Heavenly Thunderbolt flashed toward the second Devil King who had entered the zone of thunder, but the attack wasn't too effective. This was because there was little of Heavenly Thunderbolt released. It required more power. The next instant, Li Yunmu inputted even more thunder power, and instantly, great changes occurred in the surroundings covered by the thunder domain. One after another, bolts of thunder flashed, falling on the body of the Divine Blood Devil King. Because of this, one rainbow light was soon extinguished. Thunder Dark Flux energy deserved its title of the most destructive energy. It wasn't given to it without any basis. Before Li Yunmu tested the flag's power, he did not think too much about it, but after trying it out himself, he was left in shock. He had roughly used up 1% of the Thunder Dark Flux energy, and the flag produced 11 heavenly thunderbolts. The power of this killing spell was just too excessive, and its formidable might was even being amplified by the amount of power Li Yunmu inputted. Thunder Serpent, kill it! Instantly, a bucket-sized thunder serpent, which was made up of thunder energy compressed to its utmost, descended from the sky and pounced toward the divine blood devil king. Thunder Hell! This time, the scene became even more terrifying. The whole thunder domain, including the sky, earth, and everything in between, was covered by a large amount of thunderbolts. All of Li Yunmu's thunder energy was extracted within an instant for this ranged-type deadly technique. Once he unleashed it, the Phantom Kings and other monsters which had followed the Devil King inside began to wail like ghosts. By this time, the zones of other attributes were also activated by Underworld Hand and the others. None of them had expected that operating a deadly spell would allow them as Flux disciples to display this level of power. The difference between the two realms of Flux disciples and Flux masters was considered so enormous that even Zhanbei wouldn't dare to claim that he could bypass it and fight with a Flux master. The disparity between the two realms was simply something that could not be bypassed. But right then, the deadly spell had accomplished just that. An 8 Rainbow Light Devil King's strength almost reached the pinnacle of Flux disciple realm. However, at this moment they were entrapped by the deadly spell and ruthlessly hammered by various abilities. Still, the 3 Divine Blood Devil Kings were extremely terrifying. When they only had 2 rainbow lights left, they went berserk. These Devil Kings who had been transformed by divine blood suddenly burst forth explosively. Both their movement and attack speed reached a terrifying level. They exploited their berserk attacks and attacked the maze within the valley, trying to get outside the deadly spell. The formation regrettably lacked 2 spells. According to the system's analysis, this resulted in some loopholes in the restrictions on the 5 senses. And since they were there, in time, the Divine Blood Devil Kings found the best locations. They were the heat and the earth domains. These 2 positions lacked someone controlling them, but they were covered by the 4 runic spear forbidden weapons. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Blade Overlord and Barbarian Neo used the deadly weapons in unison, launching the 4 spears which finally crushed the Devil King that was trying to escape. However, a second Divine Blood Devil King was already there. It broke out of the spell while the 4 deadly weapons were being reloaded. Bang! 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 With the attack speed of 15 attacks per second, the Berserk Devil King rushed to the edge of the deadly spell and began to attack its protective cover. Everyone's faces turned pale at this instant. None of them had expected that after receiving the attacks of the deadly spell, these Devil Kings would still remain alive and even come to threaten them. The cover formed by the deadly spell began to shake under the attacks of the Berserk Devil King. The see-through shield was on the verge of disappearing. However, at this time, another 8 Rainbow Light Devil King came from somewhere and attacked the first Devil King, sending it flying. Another Divine Blood Devil King? And one with none of its rainbow lights extinguished? Where did it come from? The answer presented itself quickly. It was the Mist Fiend Devil King which Li Yunmu had obtained from the special dimensional box. This creature belonged to Mist Fiend race like the others here, and it also had been transformed by divine blood and had 8 rainbow lights. Instantly, the 2 Devil Kings forgot their surroundings and began to battle fiercely. They had similar strength, but in the end, the enemy Devil King was torn to shreds after having extinguished 4 of the rainbow lights of Li Yunmu's Mist Fiend. A drop of divine blood floated into the air. No, there were 3 drops, because all 3 of the Devil Kings had died. One had died after being critically injured by the forbidden tools, one had been killed by the Mist Fiend, and the final one had died in Li Yunmu's Thunder Zone. Thunder Dark Flux energy was indeed worthy of being called the most powerful destructive power. Under Li Yunmu's control, it had exterminated the 3rd Devil King. Once the 3 Devils Kings died, there was no longer any suspense toward the outcome of the battle. Even though there were more than 20 Phantom Kings left, they simply couldn't break out of the spell's field with their strength. In an hour, the battle was finished. During this time, the Dark Flux 8 spell banner had killed 3 Divine Blood Devil Kings, 27 Divine Blood Phantom Kings, and more than 360 high-level dimensional monsters. The only thing left when the spell was deactivated was a large pile of flux crystals as well as 30 drops of divine blood. Chapter 232, Discarding and Recultivating Collectively. 30 drops of divine blood. Everyone collected back the deadly spell and looked at the 30 drops of golden blood hovering over the ground. At this time, Mist Fiend rushed forward with extreme speed. In front of everyone's eyes, the 30 drops suddenly vanished, disappearing into the Divine Blood Devil King's stomach. What the F***? Barbarian Niu almost fainted. He was an evolved human from the desolate continent and was innately compatible with formidable bloodlines as well as possessed formidable flesh. Divine blood was a treasure in the eyes of others, but not extremely important for the group. However, Barbarian Niu did not have the same feeling regarding it. Since he was an evolved human from the desolate continent, that blood was nothing less than a heaven-bestowed treasure to him. However, the Devil King nurtured by his master had swallowed all the divine blood in one breath. Don't be anxious. There are still many king-class dimensional beasts left. Li Yunmu also hadn't expected that Mist Fiend would act in such a way. Before he could manage to order anything, the 30 drops of divine blood were already devoured. At this moment, if one didn't cut open Mist Fiend's stomach, there was no other way to get those blood drops out. It would be delusional to think there was a way to make it spit them out. Yeah, right. Barbarian Niu could only scowl miserably as he was forced to accept the reality of the situation. However, Li Yunmu's words were true. He didn't need to get anxious since there was still a lot of divine blood to be obtained. Everyone gazed at Mist Fiend with weird looks, expecting a transformation after it had devoured more than 30 drops of divine blood. However, nothing happened. No matter for how long they observed it, there were no changes. Even 30 drops of divine blood couldn't transform it to a 4-winged devil king. Instantly, Li Yunmu felt great regret. However, since it had already happened, there was nothing that could be done about it. Apart from a divine crystal, they also harvested several hundred high-level flux crystals. Among them, there were more than 200 silver crystals, 60 golden crystals, and 26 rainbow crystals, 26 phantom king crystals, and 3 devil king crystals. After Li Yunmu collected the flux crystals, his gaze fell on Li Qinghong. Alright, I'll take the gamble. She clearly knew that this was the time to make her decision. Abandoning all hesitation once Li Yunmu looked at her, she firmly decided to stick with her choice. She instantly sat down, cross-legged. The next instant, she reversed the circuits of 72 flux points. A large amount of flux energy was emitted from her body. At the sight of it, the eyes of other followers went wide. Among the 7 of them, Li Qinghong was indeed the most formidable. However, no one had expected that the master of frightful imperial spear would be so decisive. Once she decided to abolish her cultivation, she immediately did it. Blade Overlord. Li Yunmu's eyes fell on Lin Jian. Blade Overlord took a deep breath and then, without saying anything, followed in Li Qinghong's footsteps and abolished his cultivation. Li Yunmu also didn't say anything more. Under his command, the 6 shadows entered the surrounding fields with the goal of hunting down ordinary crystal dimensional beasts. Within this king's true territory, ordinary crystal layer monsters were fewer in numbers compared silver crystal and above layer monsters. But as long as the group was willing to search a bit, there were enough of them. Quickly, the 3-dimensional eyes who were on the lookout found a not too large group of ordinary crystal monsters at a stone forest on the west side. All of them were soon killed, which provided Li Yunmu with 79 ordinary crystals. This amount was going to be sufficient for the time being. Li Qinghong had upper pinnacle grade innate talent, which was the highest in the group. Her innate talent was 2 points, so when she recultivated after abolishing her cultivation, she only needed 24 ordinary crystals. Blade Overlord Lin Jian had lower pinnacle grade innate talent, which was 3 points. The total number of ordinary crystals he needed reached 36. Li Yunmu shifted his gaze and asked, Barbarian Niu, what's your innate talent? I only have upper high grade innate talent, 4 points, Barbarian Niu said, feeling embarrassed. Upper high grade innate talent could be considered as quite amazing among normal flux disciples, but unfortunately for him, within the group of Li Yunmu's halted fluxers, he would be ranked among the least talented. Apart from Barbarian Niu, all the others had pinnacle grade innate talent. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have entered the top 20 of the most powerful halted fluxers, none of whom were mediocre. You're also counted as one of us, so don't speak nonsense and immediately discard your cultivation, Li Yunmu said, implying that refusal wasn't an option. Originally, he wanted to slowly assist his followers in recultivating in batches of 2. The problem with that plan, however, was that there wasn't much time left. In only a month and 10 days, they had to recultivate at a great speed. A light flashed in Demon's eyes. He hadn't expected that he would be chosen by Li Yunmu to be among the first batch of people who were to abolish their cultivation and recultivate. He immediately sat down on the ground and crossed his legs, then discarded his cultivation as Barbarian Niu had done moments ago. The people who weren't chosen were Underworld Hand, Devil Monkey, and Flowing Cloud. They were now looking at the 4 people sitting on the ground and discarding their cultivation with complicated gazes. None of them were stupid. They clearly understood Li Yunmu's intentions. Li Qinghong had a rarely seen compatibility with Chao Tian's sacred beast's undying sage blood. She was also the most formidable among them, as well as had the highest innate talent. Li Yunmu placing the most emphasis on nurturing her was absolutely normal. As for Lin Jian, he was once affiliated with a transcending power. Regardless of whether it was his experience, innate talent, or perception, all of them were extraordinary. Moreover, he had left Bladdywood of his own volition and wasn't considered a traitor, so he still had 3 flux cultivation battle skills from that transcending power. He had also already congealed the framework of his blade energy and had extraordinary battle prowess. Thus, Lin Jian being Li Yunmu's second choice for nurturing was also understable. Barbarian Niu, however, only had upper high-grade innate talent. The reason why Li Yunmu had chosen him was because they were currently in a king's true territory which contained a surplus of divine blood. With this divine blood, he could not only discard his cultivation, but also refine his flesh. It would be an opportunity for him to force out his previous bloodline and gain something greater. Although Barbarian Niu would have to pay a higher price when discarding his cultivation than others, since he could refine his body using the divine blood, he also stood to gain the most. As an evolved human of the desolate continent, when he awakened, he could choose a bloodline to strengthen his body. This innate ability to refine a bloodline was unique to the desolate continent. It didn't matter whether it was fair or not, since the transformation which created the change in the surroundings was the same. Desolate continent didn't have any battle sages, it only had barbarian kings. But the number of barbarian kings it had was much lower than the number of battle sages. In fact, because the innate ability of desolate continent's evolved humans allowed them to merge a formidable bloodline with their body, thus providing them with an advantage, they had to face a great barrier in the future everywhere. It was difficult to say whether this bloodline refining innate ability which provided them superiority in the early stages was a bane or a boon. For those with lower talent, it was probably a blessing. But for people who had the potential to reach the top in the future, this was a misfortune. The path of these evolved humans was even more difficult than that of normal fluxers. As for why Li Yunmu had chosen Demon, it was also because of the divine blood. Demon's innate talent was slightly lower compared to Underworld Hands. If Li Yunmu had chosen purely on the basis of innate talent, then he would have certainly chosen Underworld Hand first. However, if sea gods people's innately awakened ability to summon sea beasts was also included in the calculation, the choice would become different. Li Yunmu had already seen the sea beast which Demon could summon. It was a powerful sea creature which could move both on land and sea, which made it rare even among the sea god's people. The reason why Li Yunmu had chosen Demon was naturally to nurture his sea beast together with him. As long as they had sufficient divine blood, Demon's sea beast could definitely be nurtured into a creature transformed by divine blood and wouldn't be much different from the king-class dimensional beasts of this king's true territory. Underworld Hand, Devil Monkey, and Flowing Cloud naturally understood Li Yunmu's thinking. None of them was a greenhorn, so they found it completely fair that they hadn't been chosen. The choices were made based on everyone's battle potential, so no one had any complaints. Chapter 233, Appearance. In the blink of an eye, time passed and a month went by. During this month, the upheaval in the 6 continents became even more chaotic. More and more powers, clans, and secret organizations did their utmost to inquire about the changes happening to Earth. As more and more people obtained bits and pieces of information about what was to come, all sorts of powers in the 6 continents began to move. Even those which had concealed themselves in the wilderness began to raise their heads. One after another, formidable people revealed themselves, and new clan-chosen ones displayed their strength. Only at this time did the normal people discover that there were numerous powers which had concealed themselves on Earth. Due to lots of powers acting behind the curtain and creating chaos, Earth became akin to a person with their insides twisted. Every day, someone would be killed, and every day, there would be 10 or more cases of revenge. Even so, nobody stopped competing. Sometimes even the clans of major cities would bet their everything in order to gain that indistinct chance to be at the forefront of the upcoming changes. Because of that, more and more people cleared the control line, the 70th level of the Tower of Glory. With varying methods and external support, many managed to pass through this threshold. In a month's time, starting from the time Li Yunmu's batch became the first people to cross the 70th level, probably close to 300 new stars with outstanding talents had obtained the qualifications. Naturally, the number of flux disciples who had died for this cause and would now remain for all eternity within the Tower of Glory continued to increase. Due to it, more and more treasures of all sorts appeared in the tower steel up for trading. The majority of people who died were in possession of one or more unusual treasures. They had come here full of hope, and each one of them had something with which they expected to succeed. That something was the reason why they had dared to gamble their lives, and various powers backed them. I'm really unlucky to have been born at the wrong time. If I had known that such change was about to happen, I would have suppressed my cultivation and grabbed this opportunity. This was the regret of a flux master who had recently ascended to the 6th dimension. And his regret mirrored the thoughts of many flux masters. Now, however, the chaos happening on Earth was completely unrelated to them. This time, it wasn't flux masters who took the leading role, and neither was it flux sages, but flux disciples who were the lowest level of power. This elder brother, could you reveal some information about the secret behind the upcoming changes? Yes, I heard that the major powers of all continents are killing people in desperation. We ordinary fluxers do not seek to compete with you, only to know what is happening. On the online platforms of all of the 6 continents, ordinary and mediocre fluxers were using all sorts of methods, even resorting to begging, to find some information about the secret that everyone was aware of but did not know what it was. But those who knew about the situation did not reveal anything. All the people who had the qualifications to know something had made an unvoiced tacit agreement to remain tight-lipped. This was because they didn't want to attract more competition. Even if it was extremely fierce now, it could always become worse. Yet basically every person on Earth already knew that the struggle was due to Earth being on the verge of some huge changes. Every person knew that something was about to change, but they didn't know what that change would be. They weren't explained in what way would the future become different. 326 people. Not long ago, another 3 crossed the control line. Forget about it. By now, I've become thoroughly annoyed by the notification of Supreme Glory announced by the Fluxer Association. All these people who are crossing the control line are nothing. Most of them were only able to do so while relying on external support and aren't that domineering themselves. Passing the control line originally meant that whoever did so could go anywhere in the 5th dimension. But right then, with so many people clearing the 70th level, it had lost all of its meaning. Thus, the Fluxer community came up with a new and more domineering title to describe people who stood at the peak of 5th dimension. That title was Overlord. Until now, those Flux disciples who were considered to be overlords by the majority only numbered 30 in all the 6 continents. These 30 overlords were publicly acknowledged as the most powerful Flux disciples. To join them was even more difficult than passing through the control line, which was being crossed by more and more Flux disciples lately. Those were considered to be overlords were seen as the greatest of the great and were seen as incomparably formidable. Included among them were people like Li Yunmu, Zhongshan Onling, Ling Shuang, Devil, Yeqing, and the group of people who had cleared the control line on the first day. As for Zihanbei, Hai Yu, Man Tian, and people like them, there wasn't any need to say anything, because they had cleared the 70th level long ago. It could be said that this newly formed list of overlords contained the names of all the Flux disciples who were seen as the most powerful people at their level. Even those Flux disciples who were cultivating secretly were to be added to this list, the numbers wouldn't change by much. Did you all notice that Zihanbei, Man Tian, Li Yunmu, Zhongshan Onling, Tyrant Zhang, and the rest of them had all not appeared publicly for a long time now? Oh yes. I noticed long ago that among the 30 overlords, apart from Yeqing, Lu Buletin, Ruin Lanji, and a few more, the others seem to have vanished. Nobody can say if they were assassinated or just are in hiding. That shouldn't be the case. It's more likely that all of them are just secretly cultivating in the 5th dimension to prepare for the final part of the race. Haha, I don't know about others, but in the past 2 days, our organization has obtained information about 3 overlords. What the F***CK, is that true? In any case, is it related to the secret pertaining to the changes on Earth? This elder brother, please keep on speaking, allow us to join in on the fun. All right. Anyway, we only stumbled upon this information accidentally. The first person to have appeared recently is Devil. He is said to have shown up at the northern continent, where his tracks were accidentally discovered by some nobody. But he then swiftly concealed himself again. Dang, Devil still has the guts to appear in the real world? Even sage-level people are being killed now. He must have enormous guts. Then what about the second person? Someone asked impatiently. The second overlord is Ji Wuxin. Someone saw her entering the higher dimensional continent's Blat Ewood, the first person answered, continuing to flaunt his knowledge. Ji Wuxin? How is she related to that transcending power? In a short while, many people were left stunned. Ji Wuxin was affiliated to War God Temple, but she had went to Blat Ewood at this crucial time. This information shocked people. When someone deliberately inquired about the matter of her leaving War God Temple, the answer regarding it startled them. The third person is Li Yunmu. Yesterday, he had secretly appeared in the northern continent with his followers. When others heard this, they were instantly surprised. Li Yunmu had also appeared? Wasn't he hiding in the Moro Mountain tenebrous hidden domain and cultivating secretly? Many powers suspected that Li Yunmu's group had found some secret region in the hidden domain. Many people had then entered the hidden domain to investigate, Buletin apart from many corpses, they didn't discover anything. Today, though, many people learned that Li Yunmu had appeared in the real world. All of them found it extremely bizarre. Why was he courting death? It made no sense for him to return to Earth at such a dangerous time. Chapter 234, Great Opportunity. It was known that Li Yunmu had appeared in the northern continent. Naturally, the information about his whereabouts had been deliberately revealed by his own self because he wanted to mislead others. While people were discussing about the 3 overlords who had finally revealed themselves instead of remaining hidden like the others, Li Yunmu had actually secretly led his followers back into the 5th dimension. That's strange. When did this devil enter frontline heaven? He had been a rogue fluxer for so long, so when had he formed such a relationship with the transcending power of the northern continent? This was the reason why Li Yunmu had revealed himself in the northern continent together with his followers and then quickly returned back to the fifth dimension. Together with his 7 followers, he had been bitterly cultivating day and night in the king's true territory for the whole month, besides showing outside today. The speed of their recultivation once they discarded their previous cultivations was faster than he had imagined. Most importantly, though, Li Yunmu's own strength had increased greatly during this month. By relying on his own strength as well, the Dark Flux 8 spell banner and the runic spears, he had already exterminated 5 Divine Blood Kings' domains while also dealing with a large number of Divine Blood Phantoms and Divine Blood Devil Kings. Even the 12 Rainbow Light Divine Blood Kings, which could give a fright to any Flux disciple, had been killed by him. 5 of them even. As a result, his cultivation had entered the pinnacle of the 5th dimension, the Rainbow Crystal Layer. Moreover, he had also obtained 5 12 Rainbow Light King dimensional crystals. His 12 Rainbow Light King dimensional armor was finally strengthened 5 times by the King dimensional crystals. It could now truly display its superiority and extraordinariness. Each time Li Yunmu strengthened the King crystal armor, he had an option to improve one of 5 different areas. The first one he chose was the brain region. Strengthening it meant that when he adorned the King crystal armor, his brain would break through into new grounds under the armor's effects. Reflexes, eyesight, hearing, perception of other senses, intuition as well as advanced judgment, all of these would be greatly upgraded once his King crystal armor strengthened the brain region. In second place came his agility, which was mainly around the crystal armor's leg positions. After strengthening them, his movement speed as well as the power displayed by his legs would undergo a terrifying transformation. The third place that was strengthened was his power, which came from the position of crystal armor over his chest. Heart was the engine of the human body which transported blood through it. This made heart the most important organ in one's body. After strengthening this region, the crystal armor there would emit radiation toward the body which would propel the heart to increase in size, thus greatly increasing the output of flesh. Li Yunmu then could also enter a state in which he would surpass the normal limitations of his body. With his extremely formidable flesh, this kind of improvement would be displayed to the peak. The fourth thing that was strengthened was defense, which was around the torso region. Once the armor there was improved, its defensive capability was greatly reinforced and became even more profound. The fifth thing improved was energy usage. All of the King crystal armor was strengthened in general, so when it burst forth with flux energy, its usage would be substantially reduced. In the Flux Disciple layer, everyone had the opportunity at some point in time to strengthen their armor in 5 ways. This didn't apply to just King crystal armor but all of the crystal armor condensed by Flux Disciples. Depending on their strengths, different Fluxers used different Flux crystals to do so. Li Yunmu had used only the 12 Rainbow Light King dimensional crystals to strengthen his armor, wherein lay the difference. Even if it was not explained in detail, anyone could tell that the difference would be huge. After the 5 strengthenings, the disparity between King crystal armor and other Flux crystal armor became even larger. Thus, in just 1 month, Li Yunmu had not only advanced to Rainbow Crystal Layer, but also achieved his dream of strengthening his King crystal armor. It really hadn't been that hard once he got some 12 Rainbow Light King Flux crystals. He was fully aware that during the strengthening, rather than choosing directions for comprehensive strengthening, it was better to follow one path to the end. Thus, the regions he had chosen were all related to power. Since he had chosen to strengthen the heart region of his King crystal armor, he could now surpass the limits 5 times. This was because his body would be affected by the radiation from the armor over his chest. After activating the first level, his power would increase by half. Once he activated the second level, another half of his original power would be added to his current strength. If he activated the 5th level, which was the highest, his flesh would become 3 times stronger than normally. That's right, 3 times. It wasn't written wrongly before. When the final state was activated, Li Yunmu's power would increase to 3 times its original power. The reason why he had chosen power was naturally to display the dominance of his physical body to the peak. According to the system's analysis, after he had completed strengthening his armor 5 times, not only did his current strength overtake Z-Han-Bei's strength from a month ago, it had even surpassed him by 1 chip. If the power of the 2 shadows he had congealed after hacking day and night in the king's true territory was added to the count, then Li Yunmu's current strength had surpassed Z-Han-Bei by a whole line. Although the disparity between them wasn't of a whole grade, it was still a clear difference. Even if Z-Han-Bei's strength had increased during this month and his hidden trump cards were added in the calculation, Li Yunmu was still certain he would have a chance to come out victorious in the battle against the number 1 person in the 5th dimension. It wouldn't be the slightest bit of exaggeration to say that he had already surpassed people like Z-Han-Bei, Man Tian, Hai Yu, and Zhang Weia in a few short months. This was the result of him persisting on following a path to the end and insisting on congealing a king crystal armor. The Flux Disciple realm was known as a foundation-laying realm. Every time he built up his foundation, he would surpass others by a chip. When this amount was added together, the difference didn't remain at just 1 chip but increased to 1 line or even 1 or 2 grades. That's why, from the beginning, Li Yunmu had tried to build the most formidable foundation. It was only a pity that time didn't wait for people. There were less than 10 days left till the continental battle, and he didn't have time to congeal even one of the 12 rainbow lights in his crystal armor. A real pity. At this crucial time, Li Yunmu didn't hesitate to reveal himself. He was actually monitoring Devil at the moment. Although it would be better to say that he was monitoring the Azure Dragon leg guards that were in Devil's possession. If Li Yunmu could kill Devil before the day of change and obtain the Azure Dragon leg guards, he would then have 3 parts of the Supreme Battlesuit and its power would be exceptionally terrifying. The Azure Dragon Pearl given by Battle Sage Vega was the core vessel to store the killing power of Azure Dragon. Because of this, it was the strongest part. Unfortunately, in the middle of his laborious chase, Li Yunmu discovered that Devil had entered frontline heaven. Once he heard that, he could only return back to the 5th dimension. Master, I just thought of something. I don't think that this matter is a coincidence. A hint of seriousness appeared on Lin Jian's face. Northern Continent's frontline heaven's frontline god also possesses 2 parts of Azure Dragon deity suit. Li Qinghong gave voice to Lin Jian's worries. You suspect that Devil had secretly gotten help from frontline heaven. Li Yunmu was shocked inwardly. It wasn't only Lin Jian and the others who had thought of this, but he had also come to suspect it. Why would Devil, who had been a lone fluxer for ages, now return to the real world and secretly enter frontline heaven? Besides, given his foundation, if he hadn't received favor from some powerful person, it would have been very difficult for him to cross the 70th level just by relying on the Azure Dragon leg guards. But now, everything made sense. Gloominess settled over everyone. Northern Continent's frontline heaven was a transcending power. It wasn't as formidable as Bloody Wood or War God Temple, but it wasn't too much weaker than them. After all, it was a transcending power of a whole continent, so how could it be weak? Given that Li Yunmu possessed 2 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit, he had already developed an unresolvable conflict with frontline god of frontline heaven. Only if Li Yunmu willingly handed over the 2 parts of Azure Dragon deity suit would the enmity between them be resolved. However, not only Li Yunmu, even his followers would be against this. In the current world, the 5 supreme battlesuits were extremely important. There was almost no other treasure which could compare to them, for even the 5 transcending sage tools weren't worth mentioning in the same sentence. For example, War God Temple's battle god only had 4 parts of the barbarian battle deity suit, but he was still publicly acknowledged as the number 1 person in the 6 continents. Although there weren't many people at the level of a battle sage, when all of them were counted they still numbered to a decent amount. The reason why Battle God was seen as the most formidable, to the point of being acknowledged as the strongest person in all of the 6 continents, was because he possessed 4 parts of the barbarian battle deity suit. Li Yunmu hadn't yet entered the sage layer, but he couldn't just hand over the opportunity to reach the pinnacle in the future. Even if the other party was a transcending powers master, he still couldn't do it. A light flashed in Demon's eyes, and he fiercely said, "It's a big trouble, but also a big opportunity. Maybe Devil will secretly join Frontline Gods group. If that happens, it'll be very likely that he'll be in possession of 3 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit. Master, you shouldn't miss this sort of an enormous opportunity." Even War God Temple's battle god hadn't yet managed to collect all 5 parts of a supreme battle suit. Demon is right. What transcending power, Master is bound to rise to the peak in the future. We must capture this opportunity, if Demon's words are right. If Devil has 3 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit with him, then we must be ready to bet our lives for Master. Barbarian New's eyes turned red. If Master possessed 5 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit, his followers would be like heavenly envoys at the side of God. Chapter 235, Overlord level followers. We should wait for him to return to the 5th dimension before making our move. A hint of fierceness appeared in Li Yunmu's eyes. What frontline heaven, no obstacle could stand between him and Azure Dragon deity suit. After all, in this whole world, only 5 such suits were known to exist. No one would miss this type of opportunity. Because of this, they prepared to wait for the right time to ambush Devil. It was only natural that Li Yunmu and his followers wanted to strike only when they'd be sure of success. After revealing his presence on the northern continent, Li Yunmu quickly led his followers back into the 5th dimension without allowing anyone else to find out about their whereabouts. At this time, he had 4 followers by his side: Li Qinghong, Lin Jian, Barbarian Niu, and Demon. However, the presence emitted by the 4 of them had changed completely. Although they had been considered as extremely formidable existences before, they now appeared to have become even more terrifying. Their presence didn't lose to Li Yunmu himself. That's right, if he didn't use the 8 shadows, then Li Qinghong and the others would definitely be even more terrifying than Li Yunmu. During the last month, the 4 people of them had succeeded in recultivating after discarding their cultivations. They had congealed their crystal armor again, and this time it was the 8 Rainbow Light Devil King crystal armor, which was only a step inferior to Li Yunmu's 12 Rainbow Light King crystal armor. Moreover, because the number of 8 Rainbow Light Devil Kings whom they had killed far exceeded the number of 12 Rainbow Light Kings, they had not only congealed their armor but also strengthened it. In fact, they had even accumulated enough crystals to bring out the 8 Rainbow Light of their crystal armor. Once those 8 rainbow lights began to shine, there was no longer any question who was more formidable. Li Yunmu, who hadn't congealed even a single rainbow light, couldn't compare to them in any of the fields like endurance, flux light cover protection, or flux energy eruption. This was the true benefit of breaking the cauldrons and sinking the boats when they had discarded their cultivation and recultivated. If a single line was used to describe them, then these 4 people who had congealed Devil King armor as well as 8 rainbow lights were actually equivalent to ordinary 8 rainbow light Devil King bosses. But one had to keep in mind that He also possessed humanity's innate talent and wisdom as well as had grasped a lot of high-level battle skills and secret techniques which made even more of Devil Kings than the genuine 8 rainbow light Devil Kings. If these 4 people could at most challenge an ordinary 4 rainbow light Phantom King before, then right now they were capable of challenging a 12 Rainbow Light King. Of course, this was a normal Light King, not one transformed by divine blood. This difference wasn't an ordinary one. Li Yunmu had also provided each of them with a drop of divine blood which they could merge with their body refining techniques to increase their strength by another notch. Although their body refining techniques were far inferior to Li Yunmu's Great Sun Tyrant body muscle marrow secrets, after each of them merged with a drop of divine blood, the strength of their flesh had still increased many times over. When Li Qinghong's Devil King armor was successively strengthened 5 times, she took the same path as Li Yunmu. She strengthened the heart region, so when her explosive strength merged with her body which had been nurtured by the undying sage blood, the power of her offense reached an extremely frightening level. She also improved her frightful Imperial Spear's killing technique, which joined with her explosive power made sure that she was the most powerful among the group in terms of strength. If Li Yunmu didn't use his shadows in battle, then even if he used the world-killing fist's world power, Li Qinghong's frightful Imperial Spear would still blow him away. By then, Barbarian Niu had not only gained an even more formidable 8 Rainbow Light Devil King armor, but had also strengthened his armor in relation to defense. Because of it, his brute force the greatest in the group, while in terms of defense, he was only second to Li Yunmu. Given that he was an evolved human from the desolate continent, he had seen the greatest increase in his strength within this past month. In just this 1 month, he had obtained a fire attribute dark flux energy from a 12 Rainbow Light King whom they had killed. He had also used the different body constitution and innate ability of evolved humans to absorb 9 drops of divine blood. On top of that, using the blood essence of Mist Fiends, he had congealed a Mist Fiend bloodline which had been substantially purified after he absorbed 9 drops of divine blood. Thus Barbarian Niu was currently even more powerful than Li Qinghong. Based on the system's assessment, his strength was a full grade higher than that of Li Qinghong. Lin Jian had obtained demon dark flux energy from one of the 5 kings they had killed. He had also refined his body using a drop of divine blood which had improved the toughness of his flesh by a substantial margin. The direction he had chosen for strengthening his armor was agility. After the 5 strengthenings, his heavenly blade deadly technique had become filled with power and shocking agility. After he bitterly cultivated using the blade intent whetstone Li Yunmu had given him, Lin Jian's heavenly blade intent had become profound. After successfully grasping a blade technique, he had become an exceptional blade master who could kill enemies with a higher cultivation than his. Not only was his blade fast, even the movement speed with which his legs burst forth was terrifying. The last person was Demon. The increase in his strength was the smallest among the 4 of them. Because he had already been cultivating a dark flux energy, he only received baptism by divine blood which had substantially improved his body. When he had to strengthen his Devil King armor 5 times, he didn't choose the brain region or the heart region, and neither was it the chest region for defense or leg region for agility. He had instead chosen to improve the energy reduction provided by the Devil King armor. This greatly reduced the usage of his flux energy. Because of it, he could now summon not just 1 sea beast using the innate ability of sea gods evolved humans but 4 at the same time. All 4 beasts had been summoned by Demon and nurtured by divine blood. Due to this, not only had Demon's personal strength become even more formidable, he now also had 4 sea devil apes whom he could summon. All of them had also been transformed by divine blood and thus become much more powerful. Although they couldn't compare to Devil Kings, each of these divine blood sea devil apes had the strength to kill people on the level Chaosian sect previous 6 elites like Northern Black Wind. When these 4 sea devil apes joined hands with Demon, they formed a monstrously powerful team. The 4 of followers had greatly transformed during the month. Before they might have just come close to being considered as those at the peak of the 5th dimension, but right now their names were cemented among the ranks of overlords. In just 1 month, without any outsiders knowing about it, Li Yunmu had nurtured his 4 halted Fluxer followers into tyrannical existences with the assistance of King's true territory. These 4 were his followers, but if they were to fight and Li Yunmu did not use his 8 shadows, the outcome wouldn't be a pretty one. Although they wouldn't be able to break his defense, he also wouldn't be capable of gaining victory over them. This was how much they had improved in such a short amount of time. These 2 5th-dimensional armors are for you too. Merge with them. Li Yunmu took out 2-dimensional armors and gifted them to Barbarian Niu and Demon. Chapter 236, Blitz. There were very few armors of this kind in existence, but Li Yunmu had already gifted 2 of them to Li Qinghong and Lin Jian to merge with their crystal armor. Right then, since he had started focusing on nurturing Barbarian Niu and Demon as well, he decided to gift them the armor, too. Naturally, it wasn't that they couldn't do without it, but this was the time for them to lay their foundation. The stronger would continue to get stronger, getting farther and farther away from the weak. This was an established rationale. The dimensional armor he gifted to Barbarian Niu was the one he had originally prepared for himself. It was called Hell Barbarian Rhinoceros Armor and had been congealed from the corpse of a sixth-dimensional beast, Hell Barbarian Rhinoceros, which possessed formidable brute force and defense. Li Qinghong's Rainbow Bird Armor's focus was mainly on agility, with defense coming in second, while Lin Jian's 9 Phantom Fierce Tiger Armor went solely for explosive power. Unlike those, Hell Barbarian Rhinoceros Armor, which came from the sixth dimension, focused on endless brute force and defense. If the previous two armors were classified as fifth-dimensional treasure weapons, then this Hell Barbarian Rhinoceros Armor was considered as temporal-grade armor from the sixth dimension. It was certainly more formidable compared to the previous two, so it was clear how much Li Yunmu valued Barbarian Niu. The increase in his strength recently was too abnormal. His power and defense were equally terrifying, and if he merged with the Hell Barbarian Rhinoceros Armor, his strength would go up by another notch. In the list of the 30 overlords, Li Yunmu was certain that this person would enter the top 10. He then gave a fifth-dimensional armor known as Abyss Tortoise Spirit Armor to Demon. This armor focused on defense, while its secondary trait was its improvement in the wearer's 5 senses and reaction power. Once Demon merged it with his crystal armor, his ability to survive would increase greatly. In the battle against Devil, I won't fight. Everything will be up to you four. If the lot of you can't finish this assignment, then feel no need to return to my side. In the end, Li Yunmu gave his 4 followers the task of ambushing and killing Devil and temporarily separated from them. He was certain that his group's current level of strength was sufficient to deal with Devil, even if he possessed 3 Azure Dragon Deity suit items. Li Yunmu hadn't spent so much time and energy on nurturing his group just to produce some ninnies. He wanted some capable generals who could take responsibility. Besides, the strength of these 4 people was more than great enough for this task. Don't worry, Master. We will certainly finish this task before the start of the continental battle, the 4 sonorously replied, their voices full of vigor. Li Yunmu then went away by himself, leaving behind Li Qinghong and the other 3. Once he was gone, a terrifying aura burst forth from the 4 people. They had been considered as powers to be weary of in the 5th dimension since a long time ago, but now they had become even more formidable. In front of Li Yunmu, they couldn't act out as they were his followers, but once he was out of their sight everything changed. Among the 4 of them, Li Qinghong was still considered as the most influential. This formidable woman looked at the other 3 and said, "This is Master's first test for us. There are only 10 days till the continental battle, so we must obtain the Azure Dragon Deity suit parts at any cost in that time frame. We'll operate individually at first and use our private resources to find the most probable location where Devil might appear. After 3 days, we will gather here again." The 4 of them left right away. They had been suppressing their cultivation due to being halted in the 5th dimension for a long time, so naturally all of them had their own methods to conceal their strength, which they used at this moment. While Li Yunmu and his group were secretly planning to ambush and kill Devil, others were plotting to kill all unhindered fluxers one by one. Especially Devil, Ji Wuxin, and Li Yunmu, these 3 who had recently revealed their whereabouts and appeared on Earth. Such actions on their part caught many powers' attention. All of the unhindered fluxers had become hunting targets, but these 3 overlord-level characters had instantly attracted twice as many berserk killers to come and attack them. Temporal flux masters, nirvana flux masters, and even some flux sages had already begun to hurry toward the territory of Bloody Wood in the higher dimensional continent. Based on that, Ji Wuxin was probably their first target. However, after several days of searching, the hunters had to leave in disappointment. Regardless of whether it was Li Yunmu, Devil, or even Ji Wuxin, none of them appeared again in the real world. At this moment, Li Qinghong and the other 3 followers were monitoring the movements of one particular person. In the profound Devil Valley, a male figure adorning black clothes could be seen rapidly advancing through the huge valley. He was using extremely nimble maneuvers to travel over the uneven terrain. It was Nangang Gongzi, the person ranked third on the list of halted fluxers. By then, he had lost his calmness from before and was fleeing to save his life. During the last couple days, he had felt someone's eyes on him. It gave him a feeling of danger that he hadn't felt in a long time, and his heart couldn't help trembling. He had never faced such a situation in the fifth dimension. After all, people who could scare him to this extent weren't high in number here. He had never put the new star flux disciples who had cleared the 70th recently or proud children of heavens in his eyes. Although he wasn't able to reach the 70th level, he was extremely clear that it didn't mean that he was any weaker than those unhindered fluxers who had crossed it. Everyone knew that the majority of those people who had recently cleared the 70th level had done so not by relying on their own strength. Who are you? Zihanbei is recuperating from serious injuries, and truly formidable people like Mantian or Zhanhua are making their final preparations for the continental battle, so who are you to make me feel threatened this badly? Being a survivor as well as someone who had reached his position, Nangonggong's sense of danger was quite strong. In just several days, he had already crossed several frontline camps. But the feeling of fear within him hadn't diminished in the least. If being truthful, it had actually grown strong. He quickly hardened his heart and doubled his speed to rush through the profound Devil Valley even more quickly. All the high-level dimensional beasts which he encountered along the way, including golden crystal layer beasts, couldn't make him pause for a moment. As this famed Gongzi fan streaked through the land, enormous corpses began to fall to the ground, forming a river of blood, but he didn't dare to stop to collect the crystals. The sensation of danger in his heart was becoming more and more intense. Suddenly, it seemed to break through the critical point and attain the peak. His body trembled suddenly, and he subconsciously stopped, raising his head to look in front of himself. On top of a rock, 2 kilometers ahead of him, the figure of a female fluxer had appeared at some unknown time. This female fluxer was wearing a multicolored battle armor and adorned a multicolored battle helmet on her head. In one hand, she held a 5-clawed spear filled with dragon scales. At the back of her skirt armor piece were 5 crystal feathers that hadn't yet been pulled back, allowing her to hover in the air. It's you. And dimensional armor. Nangonggong's pupils shrank. He recognized this female wearing rainbow bird armor and even more clearly recognized the 5th dimensional armor faintly emitting the threatening sensation. Not many people within the 5th dimension possessed some higher dimensions armor, so how could he have expected it? It was out of his considerations that someone like her might chase after him, then reappear right in front of him, suppressing him with ease. Nangong, long time no see. Although the two of them were 2 kilometers apart, Li Qinghong's voice still passed through the distance and entered his ears. Li Yunmu, good, good, Li Yunmu. He's already matured by now, but how could a mere follower be able to suppress me to this extent? Nangonggong's lamented in a calm voice. Even though Li Qinghong was originally ranked at the 7th position among the halted fluxers, Nangonggong's had never underestimated her. He was one of the few who knew that she possessed Sun God Bird's undying sage blood, and she also had a powerful heart. She had been very formidable from the start. Many halted fluxers knew that she was bound to enter the sage layer in the future. It was akin to common knowledge. Strangely enough, though, Nangonggong's felt that the current Li Qinghong had become even more formidable compared to her past self, even though she was just standing still in her battle armor. You can't run, so don't bother to struggle. I only want to inquire about someone's whereabouts, Li Qinghong finally said. Haha. You chased me only to inquire about a person, don't tell me you're also after devil. Nangonggong's faintly laughed and suddenly battle intent burst forth from his body. If you want to know devil's whereabouts, then catch me first. He hadn't seen Li Qinghong for many days now. Although he felt pressure from her, he was still the 3rd most formidable fluxer. He didn't believe that Li Qinghong could catch up to him. However, right away, he felt a powerful presence on his right. Demon had been waiting around for a long time. His appearance fitted perfectly with his nickname, a terrifying demon coming out from the darkness while emitting a faint but savage demonic presence. You won't be able to run, Nangong. At this time, Lin Jian slowly walked toward him from the left side. He was carrying the heavenly blade on his back within a wooden sword box, but a profound blade intent was being emitted from his body, faintly enveloping Nangong Gongzi. The halted Fluxer's heart leaped to his mouth. In the short time these three had been gone from everyone's prying eyes, they had become extremely formidable, especially this blade overlord. That faint blade intent enveloping Nangong made him feel as if the heavenly blade was poised to stab him. Formidable blade intent, blade overlord already reached this stage? Moreover, he and the others are just Li Yunmu's followers. Such formidable followers. Haha, I'm also here. Senior brother Nangong, I've been thinking about you. Long time no see. At this time, Barbarian Niu, who had become several times more powerful than before, slowly walked out from the back. Barbarian Niu? You were the one chasing me from the start with such a frightful presence. How could that have been you? Nangong Gongzi felt as if the whole world had been turned upside down. Previously, he had been good friends with Barbarian Niu. They had considered themselves to be friends destined to be always by each other's side, so he knew well the other's strength. Barbarian Niu was only ranked at the 17th place among the halted Fluxers, and compared to that, he now seemed like a different person. At this time, Blade Overlord, who understood Nangong Gongzi the best, said with a sigh, "If you're still thinking of leaving with your life and getting your revenge, then tell us Devil's whereabouts." Chapter 237, Death Zone. At this time, Blade Overlord, who understood Nangong Gongzi the best, said with a sigh, "If you're still thinking of leaving with your life and getting your revenge, then tell us Devil's whereabouts." He had the same goals as Nangong Gongzi, both of them were living in order to get their revenge. The group's goal was to capture Devil and not kill Nangong Gongzi, so there was nothing wrong with giving him a way out. Good, good, good. If you want to learn about Devil's whereabouts, then you must battle me. Being the third most powerful halted Fluxer, Nangong Gongzi naturally had his pride. His rainbow energy erupted forth, and he took the initiative to move toward Li Qinghong. Lin Jian and the others didn't make any movements. They only wanted to cut off Nangong Gongzi's path of retreat from all four directions. Currently, you aren't my opponent, this is just a needless struggle. A hint of battle intent appeared on Li Qinghong's cold face. The next instant, her rainbow energy also erupted forth, and 8 rainbow lights appeared from her rainbow bird armor. Bang! The frightful imperial spear, which was filled with berserk flux energy, swiftly stabbed once. With just this one attack, the two fell apart. Li Qinghong didn't move even half step from her original position, while Nangong Gongzi was forced to retreat 8 steps in succession because of her one frighteningly powerful strike. Even when he managed to stop himself, he was still wrecked by a large amount of energy shockwaves. Bang! The rainbow armor on Nangong Gongzi's body cracked, and a mouthful of blood sprayed out from his mouth. At this moment, shock filled this halted Fluxer's face. In the 1 month that he hadn't seen her, Li Qinghong had already reached an unimaginable state. Her Sun God flame energy had become even purer and more profound, while her rainbow flux energy was now like a bottomless abyss. With just one attack, she had injured yesterday's third most powerful halted Fluxer Nangong Gongzi. Dimensional armor, 8 rainbow light king armor, as well as the terrifying strength of your flesh, I cannot believe. Nangong Gongzi felt like a wounded lone wolf. He shouted out loudly, and the next instant he rushed with an even faster speed toward Demon, who was standing to his right. This man's presence was the weakest in his group, and the disparity between him and Nangong Gongzi had been the greatest previously. When Demon saw him turning toward his side to escape the encirclement, he smiled coldly and continued watching like a spectator. At this moment, the space in front of him twisted slightly and 2 sea beasts stepped out. Once these 2 savage beasts appeared on land, they immediately opened their mouths and roared loudly. Then, under Demon's control, they looked attentively at Nangang Gongza, who was approaching them with their blue eyes. Oh hoo! Nangang Gongza saw the two ferocious sea apes pounce in front of him, their eyes locked on his person. One of them howled loudly while the other launched a punch at him. At this moment, the first moved in and swiped at him with its armored claw. Bang! After Nangang Gongzi received the two successive attacks, his injuries from before became even more severe. He was forced to retreat, but the two sea beasts didn't proceed to follow him and remained standing in their original spots while viciously staring at him with their blue eyes. Two beasts? Impossible, and even if you could summon two, how can they be so formidable? Nangang Gongzi's face turned gloomy. Li Qinghong had become even more powerful, and so had Demon, to the point that even he who was considered to be the third most powerful halted fluxer had become completely powerless when faced with him. It was as if no matter how much he struggled, he couldn't catch up. He was definitely quite young, yet he suddenly had a sense as if he was already past his prime. Meaningless struggle, this was really just a meaningless struggle. Once these four people surrounded him, regardless of who he chose to fight, all of them would be more powerful than him by a large margin. Ordinary sea devil apes can't be so powerful. These two are divine blood sea devil apes, Demon explained, having finally opened his mouth. Barbarian News then spoke up in a strong voice. Nangang, you and Devil are only collaborating because of mutual benefits. I remember you showing me some consideration in the past, so you should stop this meaningless struggle. We're not going to back off because we're handling a task from our master whom no one can stop within the fifth dimension. What level has Li Yunmi reached? Nangang Gongza lost all his strength at this moment, and his shoulders drooped when he looked at the four people around him. He could clearly see the great transformation these four had gone through during the time they had been away from sight. Although they hadn't used their full strength to attack him, given the confidence and presence they emitted, he instantly thought of one level overlord class. The strength possessed by these four would allow each of them to be classified as an overlord. Such enormous guts, you all sure are gutsy. Has your master obtained a king's true territory? That's right, now walk. As long as you hand over Devil's whereabouts to us, then as fellow halted fluxers, we won't make things difficult for you, Lin Jian said. No one knew about this scene that happened in the profound Devil Valley. And neither was anyone expecting that the halted fluxer previously ranked as the third strongest would be easily captured alive, without having any power to retaliate. After several days passed, the chaos triggered by the heavenly transformation began to gradually settle down. The continuous flow of informations which appeared suddenly and astonished everyone disappeared without a trace. There were no more sudden news about some Nirvana Flux Master or Flux Sage being killed by someone in the wilderness. The heavenly sons and daughters who had crossed the 70th level of tower were also no longer being ambushed by other powers. Everything returned to normal except for the Tower of Glory, which would still occasionally release the repeated notifications that some person from some continent cleared the 70th level. But everyone had already become numb to this. Among the people who had cleared the control line recently, the majority represented those who hadn't prepared sufficient resources, but were still unwilling to give up without staking their lives. There were 3 days left till the continental battle. Yes, only 3 more days. At this instant, in all the 6 continents, whether it were fluxers or ordinary people, all of them had their attention focused on upcoming continental battle. Although the majority of people didn't know what kind of changes would happen to Earth during the heavenly transformation, they were clear on the reason behind all the chaos recently. It was for the ticket to the continental battle that all the Flux disciples and the powers behind them had went crazy about clearing the 70th level of the Tower of Glory. All of them just wanted a spot and nothing more. On this day, 9 people entered a death zone in the 5th dimension, which was usually avoided by all. This death zone was called the Netherworld Death Zone. In the 5th dimension, the areas labeled as death zones were visited by few people. Even those whose strength surpassed the rainbow crystal layer or who were halted fluxers avoided it. The danger in a death zone far surpassed that of a hidden domain. The most important thing was that these death zones were enveloped by an air of death which didn't allow any living beings to thrive. Those who entered a death zone had their strength suppressed, and they would swiftly start feeling unwell. Besides, there was nothing in those zones of benefit to fluxers, so those places were automatically forbidden. Chapter 238, Last Moments. I really hadn't expected Devil's Nest to be in such a place. Li Qinghong surveyed the surroundings of the death zone while walking forward. When she stepped on a dried bone, her multicolored greaves crushed it to dust. As the rumors had said, the aura of death in this region was thick, and it made her uncomfortable. If Nangong wasn't leading the way, we probably would have already gotten lost, Underworld Han said with a sigh. Death zones had attracted many powers at first. They would come and probe, looking for something, but once they discovered that apart from losing manpower, they learned no secrets or found no remnants, they gradually forgot about them. No one was willing to come to an extremely dangerous death zone where they wouldn't gain anything. Are you certain that Devil is staying here now? Lin Jian asked solemnly. There were only 3 days left until the continental battle. And since the task to hunt Devil had been entrusted to them by Li Yunmu, they had to treat it with utmost importance. I'm 90% certain. Once it became known that he had entered frontline heaven, a target was painted on his back. At this moment, he can only hole up here and wait for the continental battle. Besides here, no other place could keep him safe. Nangong Gongzi and Devil were neither friends nor enemies. Being the second and third most powerful halted fluxers, they had formed a strategic alliance and nothing more. Devil naturally hadn't revealed this place to Nangong Gongzi. Yet since the two of them had to meet up from time to time to exchange information, Nangong Gongzi had come to believe that this was his hiding place. This was the reason why Li Qinghong and the others had chosen to surround and capture Nangong Gongzi. Once they found him, it was extremely likely that they would find Devil's tracks as well. Then let's go. Let's move out early to avoid any accidents, Underworld Han said cautiously. He had come together with Flowing Cloud and Devil Monkey to join the ambush on Devil. Because of lack of time as well as limited resources, they couldn't discard their cultivation and recultivate for the time being. However, their strength had still increased by a lot during this period. This was because they had received a drop of divine blood to nurture their bodies. Flowing Cloud had also produced Sun God Flame energy after her cultivation of Great Sun's secret technique had been destroyed with the help of Li Yunmu's sun. Because of it, her strength had reached its former state. In fact, after being refined by the sun, her Sun God Flame energy had become even purer. Among the 7 followers of Li Yunmu, not one could be said to be weak. If Nangong Gongzi was included, the person with the weakest combat strength would be Devil Monkey. Despite that, his strength could still be said to be much more formidable compared to that of ordinary elite rainbow crystal fluxers. The forbidden area may be an area of death for others, but for this group, half of whose members had entered the Overlord class, it could only be said to be a dangerous region. Their only fear right now was that after the information about Devil appearing in frontline heaven might spread outside and many others would hatch plans that were similar to theirs. It was extremely probable that Devil had asked help from frontline god and received 2 Azure Dragon deity suits parts for a time so he could rise his chances when fighting in the continental battle. In other words, it was highly probable that Devil was in possession of 3 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit, which would definitely attract many powers. At a piece of land not too far away from the group, ruined skeletons began to push out of the ground after having sensed the presence of the living. At the beginning, they weren't worth much attention. But gradually, as time passed, the group discovered that in the boundless land around them, increasingly more and more skeletons kept appearing. They formed a densely packed crowd which surrounded the 8 of them. There were human skeletons as well as those of evolved beasts, but even more were of all sorts of dimensional beasts, some human-shaped and some extremely vicious-looking. These nasty dead things had all been nourished by the death aura of this forbidden region and had gradually transformed into extremely vicious and dangerous zombies. Run, advance toward the depths of this region. These zombies are extremely formidable. We cannot stay at the same place for long, for if we get entangled with a large number of them, we'll certainly die, Nangang Gongzi urged everyone. After his words, the group quickly advanced forward, killing all the obstacles in their path. Every person went on a killing spree in the sea of zombies to create a path to enter the abyss. After a day and a night passed, under Nangang Gongzi's instructions, the group finally arrived at a valley. The 8 of them raised their heads at the same time and saw a cave at the precipice of the valley. This cave was Devil's hiding place. He really made good use of the Azure Dragon leg guards. If Devil didn't possess the suit's part which increased his speed to an extraordinary level, then entering this death zone would have ended in a disaster for him. Yes, that's true. No one would think that Devil might be hiding here. Underworld Hand and the others frowned while surveying the surroundings of the mountain. It is highly probable that he is in possession of 3 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit. How do you plan to deal with him? If it's just by relying on your strength, then I'm afraid that you won't be able to stop him. It's even quite likely that 3 of you will die here, Nangang Gongzi said faintly. Devil's strength was a line higher compared to Nangang Gongzi's, while the most powerful person Z-Han-Bei was a grade higher than Devil and Nangang Gongzi. Although the disparity between the second and third powers wasn't that high, a line's worth of difference still existed. And right now, if Devil had obtained 2 extra parts of Azure Dragon deity suit, he would be even more powerful. Nangang Gongzi really couldn't understand why Li Yunmu hadn't come himself to deal with a matter of such importance but had the confidence that Li Qinghong and the others could deal with it. Was he still underestimating the might of Azure Dragon deity suit? Soon, though, his thoughts changed. It was when Underworld Hand and the others took out a certain item. Dark Flux 8 Spell Banner. Nangang Gongzi sucked in a deep breath. He was naturally aware of this extremely deadly spell in the exchange list of 70th level of the Tower of Glory. He just hadn't expected that not only would Li Yunmu snatch the refining pagoda from the hands of Chao Tian sect, but also have surplus tower badges to exchange for this deadly spell. Truly, what a monster! At this moment, Nangang Gongzi had a growing sensation that Li Yunmu couldn't be measured by normal standards. A month ago at Moro Mountain Tenebrous Hidden Domain, he had gotten an idea about Li Yunmu's strength when he saw him fight with the 6 elites of Chao Tian sect. However, just after a month, Li Yunmu made him formerly the 3rd most powerful halted fluxer feel that he wouldn't be able to fight back in the slightest when faced with him, let alone ambush and kill him. Devil, oh Devil! On that day, I suggested that you and I join hands to kill this Li Yunmu there and then, but you missed the opportunity because of your cautious nature. Now, you can only regret your past decision. Nangang Gongzi did not speak up. With Underworld Hand and the others moving quickly, the Dark Flux 8 spell banner was arranged in no time. Everyone took their respective positions and began to wait for Devil to show himself. At this moment, at the boundary of the death zone which no one had been willing to enter for a long time, 2 people suddenly appeared. This is the 7th Forbidden Zone. All 10 of them in the 5th dimension are shrouded by a strange power. Since divine religion was unable to find Devil's location, apart from the natural energy covering these forbidden zones, I couldn't think of any other place in the 5th dimension which could accomplish such a feat. Once these 2 males stepped into the death zone, they narrowed their eyes and looked at each other. Both of them could see a hint of astonishment in the eyes of the other. He's here, all right. My intuition is telling me that Devil is hiding in this death zone, Z-Han-Bei said, smiling faintly. You're not mistaken. Since both of our intuitions are telling us the same thing, then he is certainly here. 3 parts of the Azure Dragon deity suit as long as I obtain them, I won't have to fear anyone. Chapter 239, Powerful People Collide. Z-Han-Bei, and Gea. On top of a mountain in the death zone, Li Yunmu was sitting at the peak while the 3-dimensional eyes were monitoring the border of the death zone's entrance. When Z-Han-Bei and Gea took their first step into the death zone, the system's imagery scout reflected the images in Li Yunmu's conscience. At this moment, he was shocked by the fact that Z-Han-Bei had a companion by his side. According to the data gathered by the system, he knew that this person called Jia was a divine knight of Holy Spirit Continent's divine religion. He had always remained low-key and wasn't famous, but he actually possessed extraordinary strength. Reportedly, 2 years ago, this Jia had separated himself from divine religion for some unknown reason. It was out of Li Yunmu's expectations that someone like him would have joined Z-Han-Bei. Could the two of them have secretly formed an alliance? Li Yunmu pursed his brows. Since the two of them had suddenly entered the death zone together, Li Yunmu naturally wouldn't think of it as a simple coincidence. Besides, even if he had entrusted the task of ambushing Devil to his followers, it didn't mean that he didn't attach any importance to it. He had secretly entered the death zone and was hiding to monitor the surroundings and prevent anything unexpected from happening. Although, he hadn't actually expected for anything out of ordinary happening. Since Jia had involved himself in this matter, it wasn't too difficult to guess how they had found out about this place. Divine religion had an extremely vicious and dreadful ability. Reportedly, their Scarlet Archbishops could use oracle-like powers to search for people's tracks and predict their approximate position. Since Z-Han-Bei and Jia had come right near the end, it was clear that they had used this method. Regardless of whether Devil had one part of Azure Dragon Deity Battlesuit or 3, Li Yunmu had to obtain them. He couldn't allow anyone else to dip their fingers into this matter, even if it was Z-Han-Bei who was considered as the most powerful person in the fifth dimension. Go, block them. Li Yunmu didn't move from his position on the mountaintop. Instead, after receiving his command, 2 devil kings behind him flapped their devilish wings and rushed toward the 2 intruders. That's right, during the month, Li Yunmu had killed a large number of phantom and devil kings as well as 12 rainbow light kings, thus obtaining another special dimensional box. After opening it, he once again got a mist fiend egg which matured with time. Thus, he now had 2 divine blood 8 rainbow light devil kings by his side. This was one of the reasons for his confidence in dealing with the people who had come here to mess up his plan. Although the 2 devil kings had swallowed a large amount of divine blood, they still hadn't transformed into 4-winged mist fiends. Even so, their strength right then was extremely formidable. Unlike the devil king who had almost killed Li Yunmu the first time, they were stronger by a chip because of devouring so much divine blood. Soon, Jia and Z-Han-Bei who had just entered the death zone sensed incoming danger. 2 8 rainbow light devil kings are watching us. Something is wrong here. Death zones don't have any live monsters, their presence is due to some human. Z-Han-Bei and Jia quickly noticed the enemies and felt something queer. Both of them were terrifying overlords of the 5th dimension with strength surpassing the majority of others of their rank, so how could 2 devil kings stop them? Everything happened swiftly. The 2 of them separated. Each of them faced a devil king, and the battle began. However, the next instant, both of them suffered a loss. Jiya's expression changed, and he loudly yelled to Z-Han-Bei, "Be careful! They aren't ordinary 8 rainbow light devil kings, they belong to mist fiend race, and it's extremely likely that they've been transformed by divine blood. This Jiya was worthy of being a person from divine religion." In just one exchange, he figured out the devil kings, swiftly remembering about mist fiends. Furthermore, once he saw the power displayed, he also guessed that they must have devoured divine blood. However, he was still a bit too slow. It must be known that 2 upgrades ago, Li Yunmu had almost died under the hands of that mist fiend. Although Z-Han-Bei and Jiya's strength was greater than his back then, they had been too careless at the start and were now paying the price for it. When the 2 of them exchanged blows with the divine blood 8 rainbow light devil kings, they immediately suffered losses because of their opponent's savage attacks and terrifying attack speed. Both of them instantly received a couple claw attacks which cracked their crystal armor. The movement speed at which the devil kings had rushed them made it seem as if they were teleporting. It was astonishing, and so was their savageness. World Flux Fist. In the end, Z-Han-Bei used the flux energy in his body and fused it together with the world power of his two-sun heavenly world and punched heavily the Devil King who was chasing him. This one punch immediately caused Li Yunmu to stand up. The most powerful halted fluxer, this Z-Han-Bei, had directly launched a world flux fist which was surprisingly more powerful than his world-killing fist. If Li Yunmu's world-killing fist was a technique which emphasized fully bringing out the power of his heavenly world and utilizing it to the extreme, then Z-Han-Bei's world flux fist fused his body's flux energy with the world power, producing the most powerful punch. Still, it couldn't compare with world-killing fist in fist intent to use the world power to the extreme. In terms of fist intent and resolution, world flux fist couldn't compare to Li Yunmu's world-killing fist. However, the explosive power of this fist put it at the top. As for using power to compare them, as long as both fists were equally formidable, then the victor could only be determined on the basis of fist intent. However, whether it was world power or amount of flux energy, the opponent was currently more formidable than Li Yunmu. When Z-Han-Bei launched his attack, the surrounding space seemed to cave inwards. The fist filled with pure power surprisingly almost crossed the limit of power allowed by the fifth dimension. This one punch had almost attracted world punishment. If Li Yunmu wanted to accomplish the same, he would have had to unleash danger critical strike along with all his shadows. Bang! An explosion rang out at the edge of death zone as if 1,000 kilograms of explosives had been lit. The two Devil Kings were ruthlessly blown away by the single punch. Of their 8 rainbow lights, 4 were extinguished by that strike. Move! Z-Han-Bei coughed up a mouthful of blood. Then, with the assistance of G.E.A., he immediately turned around and ran away, using the opportunity provided by his fist. Chapter 240, Intruders. Li Yunmu watched them leave with a complex expression, but in the end still decided against chasing after them. In his mind, he commanded the 2 divine blood Devil Kings to return to his side. If it had been only G.E.A. or Z-Han-Bei alone, then he would have used this opportunity to catch up to them. Li Yunmu was confident that by relying on his 2 divine blood Devil Kings and 8 shadows, he could deal with one of them. However, since the 2 of them were now together, Li Yunmu couldn't make his move. He didn't have the ability to win when they combined their strengths. Both the reality of the situation and his guess were identical on this issue. The strength displayed by Z-Han-Bei moments ago was 30% higher than in the data gathered by the system from the online network. And G.E.A.'s strength, which had astonished Li Yunmu, surprisingly wasn't one whit inferior to that of Z-Han-Bei. Furthermore, both of them still had many unknown trump cards in their sleeves, so Li Yunmu didn't take the risk to attack them. Currently, his main goal was to get his hands on Devil's part of the Azure Dragon deity suit. If he began a battle with G.E.A. and Z-Han-Bei without any reason, it would untimely reveal his strength. Once he considered the situation in this regard, it was clear that chasing after the 2 fluxers would result in more losses than gains. After ambushing the intruders, Li Yunmu made sure to calm down. He couldn't be careless now. In this large world, there had to be many people like that duo before. Since Li Qinghong and the others managed to use Nangang Gongzi to find out about this location, then others might have done similar things as well. There should be a number of other fluxers heading toward this death zone, and he needed to stop all of them at the entrance. G.E.A. and Z-Han-Bei retreated quickly. After they were more than 10 miles away and were sure that the Devil Kings weren't chasing after them, they finally stopped. Careless, I hadn't expected that we might be suddenly attacked by 2 8 Rainbow Light Devil Kings. They weren't simple mist fiends, either, but those who had devoured divine blood. G.E.A.'s mood was pretty gloomy. Since the 2 of them had been careless in their exchange with the 2 divine blood mist fiends, those monsters had attacked with terrifying speed and destroyed their armor, injuring their internal organs. Although the injuries weren't serious and only required a day and a half to heal, the 2 of them no longer had the ability to return back to the death zone. Who was it that intercepted us? At this moment, their hearts were full of astonishment. If they hadn't been careless and considered that the two divine blood devil kings might be controlled by someone, they definitely wouldn't have lost. However, now that they were injured, they were even more anxious about being secretly monitored by someone. Forget it, seems like Azure Dragon Deity Suit and I aren't destined together. Let's return back to heal our injuries and wait for our chance. Both Zhanbei and Jia abandoned the thought of intruding back into the death zone. However, they hadn't renounced it completely. They were fully aware that other powers would also be trying to find this place. And sure enough, after an hour, another power halted at the edge of the Forbidden Zone. There was only one entrance into the death zone, so everyone had to pass through the same place. When Jia and Zhanbei discovered the newcomers, Li Yunmu did so as well. This is the 9th Forbidden Zone. Apart from the 10 Forbidden Zones, I couldn't think of any other places which could hide him from our oracle's knowledge. There are only 3 days left. If we don't sense Devil's presence in this forbidden region, then we'll have to use our best speed to rush toward the last one. This time, many people had come, their number reaching 16. They were wearing quite bizarre clothes, but the majority of them 15, to be exact, did not seem to be very formidable. This was, of course, in contrast to Overlord class Fluxers. However, the leader-looking person, who was a youth with a ponytail, appeared to be extremely formidable. His presence made it certain that he was an Overlord class person. Higher dimensional continent's Bulletin clansman. A strange light flickered in Jiya's eyes when he voiced the origins of this Bulletin clan. Currently, he was hiding with Zhanbei in a distant forest from which they could still see the edge of the death zone. Bulletin clan. The appearance of heavenly transformation even forced this mysterious clan, which normally stays hidden in the mountains, to show their face. According to hearsay, this Bulletin clan has someone named Lu Bulletin who shares the name with a famed battle general from the time before the Dark Ages, Zhanbei said with a hint of seriousness on his face. That's right. The person who dares to inherit the name of a great ancestor is either an ignorant child or a disciple with formidable might. This Lu Bulletin isn't simple, but that's just perfect. Let's see how that person who ambushed us will deal with them. A hint of happiness appeared on Jiya's face. Higher dimensional continent's Bulletin clan? Lu Bulletin. At this time, Li Yunmu was being informed by the system about the origins of the intruders. Ordinary people couldn't survive in the dangerous environment of the higher dimensional continent. Those who could do so were all Fluxers, and only those who had powerful combat strength and formidable survival ability. None of the Fluxers who came from the higher dimensional continent could be considered weak. Bulletin clan was a clan which lived at one of the mountains among the 100,000 mountains of higher dimensional continent, like many other similar clans. However, this Bulletin clan was one of the largest clans there. It was also one of the 3 wealthiest and most powerful ones, too. Li Yunmu knew about this person called Lu Bulletin. Currently, he was on the list of the 30 overlords and possessed a relatively tyrannical strength. It was also said that he possessed a secret technique passed on in Bulletin clan. There's Devil's presence here, young master. I can confirm that Devil is certainly in this forbidden region. Once the 16 people entered the death zone, one of them immediately took note of Devil's presence, but Li Yunmu wasn't able to discover what method these Bulletin clansmen had used to do so. Quickly, the person from the Bulletin clan made many reports in succession. Strange. There is also the presence of 2 formidable mist fiends. Not good. There is still Zhanbei and another formidable person's presence as well. This second person's strength probably isn't one whit inferior to Zhanbei's. There's also something abnormal on the side. I can sense a faint but formidable presence concealed some distance away from us. This person is also within the death zone. Li Yunmu, who was monitoring their movements with the 3-dimensional space eyes concealed in the sky, was forced to make a new assessment of this higher dimensional continent's mysterious clan. Just by relying on their secret technique, they had not only discovered the presence of Jia and Zhanbei, but also his, which was concealed far away from them, as well. Young master, it hasn't been long since Zihanbei and his partner's presences disappeared. I would guess that they were forced to retreat before going in much farther. The person from Buletin clan still continued to fumble about with his ability and made a complete overview of the situation. Once he reported it, the expressions on the faces of Buletin clansmen transformed, and even Li Buletin's changed slightly. Zihanbei and another equally formidable companion of his had been forced to retreat? All of them were completely astonished by this information. Can you locate the person who is still within the death zone? Lu Buletin coldly asked. I have already tracked him. He is roughly 5 miles away from us, sitting on a mountain. Suddenly this person seemed to have discovered something, for he lifted his head. At the same, his eyes shrank. Enemy Ada. Pang. Before he could finish his sentence, an object at an extremely fast speed slammed into him, blowing him away.